Well, welcome viewers and AOSC members, and thanks for joining us for the pre-race show for round number 4 here for the AOSC 10. And of course, myself, Matt Cav, being joined by Matthew Norris and Daniel Leat. Thanks, guys. You're back in the house, and we've got another round to talk about.
Yeah, good evening, mate. Great. Oh, good morning, good evening, wherever you're tuning in, watching it. It's good to be back and really looking forward to it. We saw an awesome race last week out at Monza and definitely a lot to dive into.
And Norry, you've had a big week digesting everything that happened. The first of our endurances, 650 Ks at Monza. There's going to be a hell of a lot to talk about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good night. It was fantastic at Monza. It was great to see all the endurance races. I had a few stylish retro liveries carry over from the last round of last season, but there was a few big hits and a few big spins and a bit of yo-yo action.
Yeah, can't wait to talk about that. Don't forget, of course, if you haven't already, make sure you go into the YouTube and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, AOSC Space TV. That's AOSC TV. Like and subscribe to that one. And, of course, big thanks to our sponsors for this season, of course, Jinx Shifters, AJ Insurance Services, Simrigs.com, Sydney Computers, Sixth Gear Imagery, Race Art Australia, Track Chems for Gourmets, who are giving us some fantastic views that we haven't had the chance to use before in our broadcast. So that's absolutely fantastic. And if you're just joining in for the start of the show, don't forget we do start things off on Friday night. 9:30 p.m. will be qualifying and 10 p.m. will be the main race this week because we've got a sprint race coming up, which we'll get into very shortly. But first off, we're going to talk about Monza, 650 Ks, the first of our endurances where we have 2 drivers. Lots going on there, lots of championship implications that we got through with lots of incidents happening. Let's run us through the top 10 right now. Let's get through those first. Of course, our winners again was the Logitech Diautis Esports crew. It was James Scott leading us, and Cooper Webster actually crossed the line, and that one he got to finish the race off. Second was Adam Briggs and Andrew Dyson. Then it went back to Wayne Burke and Tom Freer, followed by Kyle Stokes and Jordan Ross in the 4th position. 5th position was Michael Taliancic and Sebastian Flock. In 6th, we saw Michael Schroeder and Brenton Hobson. Then it was Sean Thompson and Thomas Hines. Then we go back to 8th position, Brian Borg and Corey Shepherd. 9th position was Todd Hayne and Adam Hayne. And rounding out our top 10 was Sean Lindsell and Kenneth Latta. Guys, I don't even know where to start on this one. I mean, looking at the top 10, there was plenty that went on it. It looked fairly standard there when you see the names that we've been seeing in the top 10 quite regularly. But a few of those guys are very lucky to be in there.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw some big hits, as Norrie was saying very early on, right throughout the field, and we're going to touch on a few of those later on when we go back over some of the penalties and incidents that happened throughout the event. But I think probably the biggest takeaway going from what we saw from Road America the week prior, James Scott was under a lot of fire this week at Monza, able to get a massive advantage early on. I don't think anyone expected coming into the first round of the safety cars that they would have had somewhere in the vicinity of a 20 to 25 second advantage over the field. Couple that with Cooper Webster when he stepped on board, which is a different pairing to what we saw last year for James. I mean, he did primarily the endurance series with Brodie Mayers. Cooper was on song the whole way through, didn't miss a beat, kept the pace up. Those guys really impressed a lot of people out there again.
Yeah, Norrie, have you got any standouts just looking at those standings?
I'd love to pull out Michael Taliancic and Sebastian Flock. They were really the best runners, in my opinion. They basically just ran their own race and they wound up 5th at the end of it. So it obviously worked out for them. A few guys we don't normally see that far down, Brian Bull, Corey Shepherd, but we do know there was a bit of fuel saving going on in the end of that stint for them. So they're a bit out of sorts, but most everyone was in about the right part for me.
Well, let's get into how some of these results happened. And the best way to kick that off is, first off, we're going to have a look at the AJ Insurance Services impact of the round. And this week it was a big one. And it was Brian Borg who made contact with Jordan Ross going into turn 4. Jordan Ross ended up back in the field, went back to nowhere. It's actually the second time in the race he got turned around. So very unfortunate for the number 143. Let's have a look at the replay and see exactly what happened. Well, guys, now that we've gone through the replay and had a look at what happened, I mean, a couple of things to talk about there. Jordan Ross actually makes a little bit of contact there coming around turn number 3 around the big bend with Christian Smart as well. So that could have really been detrimental to him as well. That could have thrown him off the track, but manages to get by. And then you see Brian Borg with a big dive trying to make some positions. Norry, I mean, how do you take this one?
I see it as a bit of a Borgie had a lot of ambition and not a lot of talent. But in all honesty, he locked up. He thought that gap was a lot bigger than it was. And I guess you've got to take the Ayrton Senna line. If there's a gap and you don't take it, you're not a racing driver. So Borgie did what 3 of us would have done there.
And Dan, sort of what implications did that have on the race? Because we know he copped the penalty for that. We can talk about that. He did a drive-through and really put him back in the position in the pack.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a big incident. I mean, once that came out, the penalties were issued. They were in a really good position leading up into that little exchange. And if in most circumstances he would have pulled that move off, but obviously with the penalty and the subsequent drive-through, it threw him right at the back of the field. Later on, we saw those guys have some issues as far as fuel conservation goes, and they did run very lean and had to come back for another stop. So, it was a night of what could have been. They were in the prime spot. Corey Shepherd obviously was leading the race. Take that away, potentially might have come out from the round still at the head of the championship. But, it was a costly night nonetheless.
And those are the reasons why we chose that as the AJ Insurance Services impact of the round, because it is the championship implications they had, not just for Corey Shepherd, but for Brian Borg, who were sitting 1 and 4. So we'll see where they end up in the championship a bit later on in the show. And we move on a little bit now to our photo finish. We love checking this one out, all thanks to Sydney Computers. And this week it is actually for position 21 and 22. It's right down the back of the field, but these guys battled it all the way to the end. It was absolutely hundreds of a second between them, between the Taipan Esports of Hayden Harrison and Luke Holland, with Harrison driving, versus the Fishy Motorsports of Michael Whiting and Jamie Dyke, with Michael Whiting at the wheel over the line. This is 21st and 22nd, a couple of hundred seconds in it. Let's check out the replay. I tell you what, we have had some really close photo finishes already. We're only 3 rounds into racing, going into our 4th round, and that was another fantastic one back with 21st and 22nd position. These guys went all the way down. I thought, that possibly Michael Whiting was going to bring this one home in 21st, but Hayden Harrison had other thoughts. Dan, that was a risky manoeuvre around the outside.
Absolutely. And it was all set up from the run that the guys got through Ascari. We saw Michael obviously leading the way down, trying to break the draft as they went down the back straight in towards the Parabolica, really held that inside line quite well and got the car turned squared away on the exit. And for Harrison and Holland, as they came through, the side-by-side action was all the way there. I think they played the smart move, though, tucked back in behind, picked up the draft again as the guys went down the front straight and just had that little bit of extra forward momentum to come across the line. As we see from the photo finish at the end there, not much in it. It's not what we saw last week out at Road America, but very, very close nonetheless. Yeah,
Norry, you really got to risk it to get the biscuit, don't you?
Yeah, sometimes it's taking the grass and sometimes it's taking the too wide around the Parabolica. But, Hayden Harris definitely the beneficiary there. The photo really captures it nicely. There was nothing in it at the line, but it was any man's game from Ascari onwards.
Yeah, big thanks, of course, to 6th Gear Imagery for supplying us with not only the photo finish, but also our impact of the round. Some great photography coming out of him, and you can check out all the social media pages. But we're still talking about round number 3, some other things to come out of it. Obviously there was Brian Borg and Corey Shepherd finishing 8th after that, and we do know they were fuel saving at the end. So they were actually up to about 6th position from memory. Actually, I think they got 5th, and they had to drop themselves back down to the 8th. Other one was Matty Mascord. He, unfortunately, I assume he was fuel saving at the end as well, because he came in a couple of laps earlier than most of the other guys did as well, the other drivers. So he was a bit out of sequence there. They tried to push to the end, and he was also up in the top 3 for a while, and he ended up down the list a little bit more. So a bit unfortunate for him to be a bit further down there, back in 11th. So he just missed out in the top 10. So another good drive from him. But like you say, there's a number of names in there, and anything could have happened. Who are some of your other picks in the down there, Norry, that you saw had a great sort of endurance round?
I'd like to start off with the not so great, because Jordan Ross was doing a bit of a yo-yo action. He was up and down the field more times than I'd like to imagine. But sort of coming through, you did have Freya and Wayne Burke. They were up there all race. They were sort of there or thereabouts. And then, like I said, with Sebastian Flock and Michael Talancic, they had a really great running too. They were just sticking to their own playbook. And they really didn't get caught up in anyone's drama. So it was really good showing from those guys.
And Dan, who excited you this week?
Look, I really enjoyed the racing that we saw in the mid-pack. It was really hard, fast the whole way through. Not a lot of room was given from all those guys concerned. And occasionally saw it go a little bit too far, but worked their way through. Rob Harris had another eventful round. We saw him getting rotated early on down into the second chicane, and that car went back to forward throughout the field, very similar to what Jordan Ross did. But they came back, got themselves home in P15, so not a huge amount of point loss from them there. So they really did quite well. The other big standouts, obviously, just the consistency that we saw from Dyson and his teammate, and then Michael Talancic, again, just racking up the points, which is what they're going to need to do to get themselves in for the championship spot.
Yeah, I think Jordan Ross is in for a big one. Even Kyle Stokes, they impressed me to come back twice. They got spun earlier in the race as well. So twice they fought their way back through the field, and they didn't take very many early pit stops. They didn't have to change their strategy too much, just some really good driving from them to get them back into the top 10. And, to end up in 4th was a huge moment, I think, anyway, in my opinion. So, yeah, fantastic race to watch, 650 Ks. But as always, when the 650 Ks, there's 112 laps we went around there, and we had a heap of cars on track, there's going to be some incidents and some license points deductions. Now, let's have a look at those. Well, Dan, do you want to take us through a couple of these? Anything you get sort of stand out there? Obviously, there's a drive-through penalty from Shepherd and Brian Borg. We don't need to talk about that one again, but just a few other things going on. Lots of small incidents throughout the race.
Yeah, definitely. We had a lot of drive-through penalties, and a lot of that really was caused from not being able to give enough room. Joseph Delaney had an issue for going through the Ascari there, not being able to leave enough room. Brian Borg, as you spoke on, had his incidents. Christian Smart, a 10-second penalty for drive-through. Again, a little bit of incident not being there. But the other big thing is quite a few drivers picked up some big incident point or some big license point penalties as well. So we've got Delaney's in there, Borg's picked up 10. Jamie Dyke also picked up 10 points as well. So those guys are going to have to be very cautious with the license point penalties that they incur for the remainder of the season, and try and keep those to an absolute minimum, because the last thing they need is to have to sit out at an event and watch what could be a spot for a championship sort of go by the wayside as a result.
Yeah, Norry, it's very difficult, isn't it? When you got 112 laps, we throw a nice track at you. I mean, turns 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 are quite tricky under brakes. So, it was always going to be a risky there, and you really had to watch what you were doing if you wanted to conserve those license points.
Yeah, totally. I've always said Monza is 2 drag strips with some chicanes thrown in the middle, but it's the chicanes where you really make your money there, because that is the point of the track that you've really got to navigate and make sure you're not tagging anyone or getting tagged. We saw a couple of people running straight through that chicane a couple of times. Corey Shepherd was one of the recipients of the redress on that chicane manoeuvre. So it's really where you make or break your game, but there's a few different penalties that you don't want to take, and you've got to keep your consistency about you with those ones.
Well, let's get back to a positive note, guys, and let's move on. Obviously, in the Jinx Shifters AOSC Season 10, the series standing so far. It's we're only 3 rounds in, and we've seen the Enduros. We've had a 300K now. We've had the co-drivers as well in, so we've got the 650K done, and this is where we've ended up. And no surprise, really, see James Scott has got back into the lead there in the Logitech G Autos Esports entry with 910 points, followed by Corey Shepherd, who drops back into second position again. Tom Freer remains in third. Brian Borg remains his spot in fourth, which is really good. Jordan Ross jumps up to position 5. Then we go back to Michael Taliancic, Andrew Dyson, Bailey Fried in 8th, Adam Briggs in 9th, and Kyle Stokes rounds out our top 10 in the series so far. Dan, a couple of movements there at the moment, and a few people just finding their way so far.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got some really good, strong runners. Dyson just picking up points. He's done it throughout the first few rounds, moved up into P7. Michael Taliancic holding steady in the 6th position, but it's going to have to be cautious because the guys behind 7th, 8th, 9th, all closing in to get themselves up inside that top 10. And then, as we saw, that big incident with Brian Ball and Corey Shepherd, unfortunately did pull Corey back from championship lead, and he's still in contention. 60 points is not a huge margin by any stretch, but really needs to knuckle down and just get those clean, consistent finishes to pull himself back into contention again.
Yeah, Norrie, we're not even 25% of the way through the season. I mean, we've got 16 rounds, only 3 completed at this stage. Who do you see who's still probably a bit of a threat in the championship to James Scott?
Well, that's the thing. We're only still in the infancy of this championship, so there's still a massive amount of way to go and a massive amount of points on the line. But my real takeouts is Tom Freer and Jordan Ross. Those synergy guys are sitting there waiting to pounce. They need to find something extra just to take the charge to Corey and James. But then you say Taliancic, Dyson, Bailey Fried, Adam Briggs, Kyle Stokes, they're all there or thereabouts. They all just need to take that extra step and take the charge. But, I'd sort of put the synergy boys at the top of my list.
Yeah, and not surprising. I mean, Jordan Ross, he's had a couple of spots he's moved up there. I'm really happy. Bailey Fried, unfortunate there to drop back to 8th because he was actually running in 5th. So, bit of an unfortunate round for him. Good to see Kyle Stokes, obviously Jordan Ross's teammate, get a swagger points there and move up. We look down the field. There's a couple of guys there who've only done 1 round as well. So, hopefully we can see some of them return in. I mean, people like Ryan Wood could make a big difference in this one. If we could see Cooper Webster come to a couple more rounds, that would be interesting to see how that does in the championship, affect some of the leaders up the front, maybe. And even Gilliam, if he can come back and get involved in the racing, we could probably see him upset some of those guys at the top, and that could have some major championship implications further on. All right, so there's your championship standings so far after 3 rounds. But another segment we'd like to bring you, of course, is the simrigs.com. Show us your rig. And this week, we did have Trent McCarthy send in some photos of his rig, and you can see it up there on screen. I mean, Norrie, this one's had a bit of wear and tear there by the looks of it on the armrest. He's been quite busy in this one.
Yeah, I don't approve of the wear and tear on the armrest, Trent. So you got to fix that one up, mate. But it's right up your alley there, Matty. It's a single screen on a desk setup, so it's right up your alley. I'd say that's a Thrustmaster T150, if I'm not mistaken, and some standard Thrustmaster pedals, RGB keyboard to keep it all lit up. But the wear and tear on the arm, that's a lot of Euro trucks gone into that. Can't be too much racing gone into that one.
I do love when you get a pedal set on the carpet, you just bolt it to a table, one decent screen, and off you go, guys. I mean, that's all I got at home for a bit of fun. So, I love when the guys get in. I love when they get involved. It doesn't mean you got to have a flash rig to send them in. Send them in, of course, on our Discord channel. We've got to show us your rigs, little segment there if you're in the AOSC Discord, or just send them to our Facebook page, and we're going to start going through them. We've got a couple more coming in as well. So it's fantastic to see, and big thanks to simrigs.com for getting behind that segment. Now, something we do need to talk about. Late news. Warning, late news. Due to a glitch in iRacing at the Long Beach hairpin on the track this week, we have seen, if you've been watching social media, it's been on the corner of Jump Street and on your Lid Lane. We have had to change our track this week. Late notice, we know, guys. We've already put up some practice sessions. You can check out exactly what was happening on social media. The car just basically goes airborne halfway around the hairpin. And in fact, it was Rob Harris, one of these, that I saw on social media. And we're pretty used to seeing him on his lid now, boys, aren't we?
Well, he's making a meal of it. He's getting very good at it. Let's say he's found the fine art. But it was a weird one to see the cars going. It's just as you hit that mid corner, you get the bump and over she goes. And I mean, there was a couple of vids, I think, from some of the DPR cars having the same issue. So yeah, could have made for a rather awkward telecast had we have stayed there.
Yeah, we didn't want to do that to some of our guys, so we thought probably best we change that. And Phillip Island's where we're going, because everyone's got a lot of experience at Phillip Island. We love going here. We've got 34 laps to get around here, 150 kilometres. We go back to a sprint race. It's going to be very different. 12 turns to get around. Dan, take us through the track.
Yeah, it's a classic GP layout, very synonymous for Australian motorsports, whether it's supercars, MotoGP. Everyone knows how to get their way around it around here. 12 turns, 4.45 kilometres. We're expecting lap times of around the 127.5 range, based on what we saw last time out in the hands of James Scott there. So really good circuit. Racing's going to be absolutely top notch, and everyone's going to be turning up with their A games, because we know the setups are going to be dialed for this one.
Well, before we get into any further, let's check out the Pure Driving School lap of Phillip Island this week. And Norry, you're going to take us through it.
G'day everyone, and welcome to the AOSC Jinx Shifters safety car as you join me, Norry, on this lap preview of Phillip Island. Working our way through turn 12 here, and there's a nice long flowing fast straight here at Phillip Island. Great view of Bass Strait, but don't be looking there, be looking at the track in front of you. Pit exit coming up on the left, that's where a lot of drivers are going to be interrupting your lap. But if you've got a clean one, it's nice down here. Back one gear, fifth, and turn into Doon corner, turn 1. You want to use that exit curve on the left, which I'm not doing because I'm lining up for turn 2 at Southern Loop. You want to hug the apex on the left-hand side here, and then work your way out onto the ripple strip at the end of the corner. And this is where you build the speed up to 5th gear and feather the throttle through here at Stoner corner before working your way down into the nice braking zone of Honda. And you've got to really turn it this one. It's a nice hairpin. You've got to get turned around and then back on the throttle. Not for long though. You're back down, and 2nd gear for Siberia. Car gets a little bit tail happy there. Working your way out of Siberia, you want to be pulling the gears because this is a nice fast section of track. You want to make sure your opponent is behind you through this one. Coming up past Hayes Shed now. We're going to be back a couple of gears over Lukey Heights here, as we want to use all the road on the left to really get into MG. Turning right through MG. It's a nice hairpin, this one. And then out of MG through turn 11. You want to watch your traction to the ground here. This is really where you need good drive traction. And as we go through 12, you need to keep that drive traction. Don't end up in the sandpit. A lot of people have done that before. And that is a lap of Phillip Island.
Well, it's Phillip Island. We're all familiar with it. Big thanks to Pure Driving School, of course, for getting us a lap around there, and Norry for taking us through exactly what we can expect this week. And don't forget, if you are an AOSC member, you can get some driver coaching if you want to look that out in our Discord channel, and get in touch with the Pure Driving School. James Scott from the Logitech G Autos Esports are actually part of that and taking people around the setup of their cars and certain corners and just training some people how to get around a lap a bit faster so they can be a bit more competitive. So great to have them on board and doing them for us. And Norry, thanks for taking us around again. But the big question, Norry, is pit stop strategy. What's yours this week?
Well, it's going to be a close shave to get out of that pit lane because that is right on the racing line where people are coming down that one. But we are back to sprint format, so there's no more multi-strategy driver numbers. Forget that, because it's just going to be one stop, and it's going to be probably about 23 odd laps to a tank. So it's pretty short and sweet this week. Just make sure you fill the thing up and get it home.
And Dan, what's the areas you are concerned about on this one?
It's going to be a bit of a trigger. Always the rundown into turn one is super fast. Expect 2 to 3 wide action for the guys getting down there. Plus, later on in the race, as Norry was saying, you've got that entrance for the guys exiting from that pit stop. The big break zone down into Honda corner. We've seen a huge amount of issues with guys previous rounds trying to get the car down there. Break. A lot of penalties can be dished out. And your light can go from great to well down the back in 2.4 seconds. So doesn't take long at all. And then the big run up through the hay shed, up over Lukey Heights and down into MG, into turn 10. We're going to see a huge amount of passing down there. But then the tricky part is get the car out of there without the wheel spin so that you can complete the lap down through turn 12 and set up for a good run for your next flying lap. So plenty of, it looks simple on the track, on paper, but it's very technically challenging in all aspects, and setups are going to have to be pretty Mickey Mouse to make it around here tonight.
Yeah, and the previous winners here have been in Series 9, Brady Mayers. James Scott was the winner back in Series 8. McKnight and Cooper Webster in Series 7, so that was a endurance round. Sam Blacklock in Series 6, and also he went there twice in Series 6, Jordan Rogers and Jay Maloney as well. So this one's a big one. James Scott didn't win last year. Brady Myers stepped in and took that crown off of him. Do you think James Scott's going to be dominant again this week, Dan and Norrie? Do you think that's where it's going to be at?
I think there's going to be a lot of very quick cars out there. You can't discount James Scott. And I know Norrie's going to be disappointed with me saying it, but Eltis have won the last 2 events that we've had there. So, tough competitors nonetheless. But keep an eye out for the Synergy guys. I mean, they've been coming on strong along with DPR. So either Jordan Ross, if he can get up there, doesn't have any issues, definitely in contention. And the likes of Andrew Dyson, Corey Shepherd, and Brian Borg all going to be in that top 5, I dare say, and challenging for the victory.
Yeah, Norrie, how do you think tyres are going to get around this track as well? Do you think we're going to see a lot of right-hand wear?
It's normal sort of right-hand wear for Phillip Island. Everyone's pretty used to it. Like you were saying before, the sets here are all pretty dialed in. If you're not quick at Phillip Island, why bother showing up to any other round? But it's hard to take the focus away from James Scott. He's always been sort of our lead driver in the series, and that's why he's won the championship twice. But I reckon, Synergy guys are going to be up there. If the Premier guys are really serious about this championship, they're going to be up there. But yeah, it's just a no fuss aero track, and they'll be fast.
Yeah, well, 150Ks, they're not going to have long to fight it out, so they're going to have to get in, and they're going to really have to make their mark early on. Now, another new thing that we are introducing into AOSC 10 is, of course, the introduction of the Top 10 Shootout, which has been put out on media this week, and we've been letting all the drivers know about it. So this is how it's going to work, and it's a little bit different to what we have seen before. We have a qualifying session, so obviously we have our pre-qualifying, then we have our split 1, our split 2. Split 1 go out, have their own qualifying session again. Well, now you're going to get one flying lap, and that's pretty much what you're going to get. You're going to go out, you're going to pre-qualify, and we're going to reduce the time down to 20 minutes. So you'll be able to do as many laps as you like in pre-qualifying. But once we get the split 1 and the split 2 separated, the top 10 after pre-qualifying will have to wait to go into a top 10 shootout at the end. They'll get an individual lap each. If you're 11 onwards, you've only got a limited amount of time to get out there as well. We've cut the session down a little bit. This one's going to be hard, Norrie. I mean, what is the strategy here? Do you wait to see who goes out first, or are you the first car out?
Well, that's the thing. You can play it from both ends of the board. Sort of, you want to be the first car out, but then everyone else is going to have that same idea. So do you wait till they've done a couple of laps and then you go out and set your lap time? Like you say, it's a challenging one to play this one, but the guys who really do come on strong will be the guys who pick that timing perfectly, who watch their timing and know exactly how far the relative is to the car behind to give you that advantage.
And Dan, the other factor to this one is also, even though the top 10 guys get a lap to themselves, we're going to make them go to the end of pit lane at the end and they will get separated and get one flying lap. If they don't set a top 10 time on that one flying lap, they could end up way back in the field.
Absolutely. It's a real pressure cooker situation for these guys because with the speed that you get around this circuit, it's very easy to get an off track. And even if it's just a 0x, that's your lap aborted, you're done. So for the guys that we would traditionally see, if they do make a little bit of a meal of it, have that little bit of an error, rather than starting 10th, we're going to see them well down the order, and that's only going to compound on what they've got to do to get through for the remainder of the race. So it's a little bit of a hero or zero moment, whether you can get it up towards the top end, but you're going to have to be supremely cautious of it. I mean, we're in some ways fortunate we're not at Long Beach, because I know there was a lot of drivers concerned about having to do that hot lap there, especially with the confines of the concrete all the way around there. So it's a little bit easier, but just as much pressure to get that good lap in.
I tell you what, though, it's going to be exciting for the viewers because we're going to be on the edge of our seats on Friday night, just waiting to see exactly what happens with the top 10 shootout and how it puts probably some names. We could see some big names further back in the pack, and we could see some names we normally see mid-pack right up the front. So this one could be an interesting round coming to you from Phillip Island. Don't forget, if you haven't subscribed to the AOSC TV YouTube channel, make sure you do. We start qualifying at 9:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So once we've done the pre-qualifying, the qualifying will be from 9:30 p.m. So make sure you tune in for that one. The main race starts at 10 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It's only 34 laps. Phillip Island, back to a 150-kilometre sprint race. Friday the 5th of February. It's race 178 in AOSC history. Guys, anything else to mention? Have we got anything else we need to look out for this week?
More bids.
Yeah, keep an eye out on the beards.
Yeah, keep sending those bids. We are looking for all the races picks, actually, because every time someone sends us a new races pick, they've all got a beard. So we'll wait and see how many beards we've got in the series this season. So can't wait. Send them in, let us know what's going on. And, of course, make sure you're commenting out there on YouTube so we can see everything and talk to you guys as well. Can't wait to see you there for round number 4 at Phillip Island. See you soon.